Discover the incredible journey of a poor man, how amazing thinking transformed his life forever. Rain pattered relentlessly on the diner's windows, blurring the outlines of a world that felt hell-bent on keeping Jake Thompson down. At 40, he stood behind the counter in a flour-dusted apron, pouring coffee for truckers and townsfolk alike. Each cup served as a reminder of the daily grind, serving others while his father lay frail and ill at home, a constant source of worry. Jake's heart sank deeper with every idle moment, simmering in the heavy air thick with fried food and regrets. Days faded into nights, ambition seemed like a cruel joke, a whisper of a distant dream overshadowed by the responsibilities he bore. "Another cup, Jake?" the professor asked, smiling, his presence a stark contrast to the greasy world around them. Jake hesitated, then nodded, pouring another cup. For the first time in years, someone was truly seen, the shimmering eyes of a man who had spent his life steeped in knowledge, yet here he was, sharing a space with Jake, a simple blue-collar worker. "You've got something special in you, Jake," the professor mused, stirring something dormant inside Jake. The words ignited a flicker of hope, lighting a path previously buried beneath layers of obligation. But how could he uncover it? How could he risk everything he had fought so hard to hold together for the sake of dreams that filtered through his fingers like sand? Before we continue, I need to tell you about something important that's happening. YouTube has been making changes to the system, and many people are losing notifications from channels they follow. If you're enjoying the content, click the bell and mark all notifications so you don't miss the next videos. And if you can leave a like, it really helps with reach. Seriously, it makes a difference. Oh, tell me in the comments where you're watching from. I'm always curious to know who's on the other side of the screen. Now let's continue. The professor's words echoed in his mind, weaving through the deep-set grooves of his life where fear of elitism lurked. Could he really challenge the prejudice people held against him? They'd always looked through the lens of his background, dismissing him as just another cog in the blue-collar machine. And now, as his father's health declined, that loyalty gnawed at him relentlessly. He feared ambition would come at the ultimate cost, his father, alone and fragile, losing what little family he had left should Jake venture beyond their humble reality. Navigating the world of academia was like trying to catch smoke with bare hands. Each lecture hall felt like a fortress built with brick walls of prestige and privilege. Tension elbowed its way into his life, an unrelenting push of duality, pull of duty versus desire. Every book he opened revealed passages of a past Jake wished he could ignore, the inheritance left to him from a grandmother he never knew, unearthed secrets of a wealthy lineage lurking just outside his reach. It threatened to unravel the bond with his father, shake the foundation of their simple life, forcing Jake to confront aches of resentment and bitterness. As he stood at this precipice, caught between responsibility and ambition, a tempest brewed within. Torn between loyalty to the man who raised him and the insatiable drive to claim a destiny, Jake felt dizzy, breathless with the weight of his choices. And just as he wrestled these demons, the screech of the family's phone pierced through the heavy air, the growing dread sending shockwaves through him. The voice on the other end whispered secrets that pulled him closer to a reality he wasn't sure he could bear. Would understanding his past strengthen the ties to his present, or would it tear them apart? Outside, the rain darkened, while inside, Jake's heart raced, poised between the jump into a new world and the raw, haunting love for a father teetering on the edge of life itself, a living testament of sacrifices made. The air thickened, tension heavy, as everything Jake fought for dangled on a thread, wavering with each anguished choice he faced. Jake's heart pounded as he lifted the receiver, his hand trembling with uncertainty. The voice on the line was calm, almost disconcertingly so, yet the message struck like a bolt of lightning in the storm of his thoughts. A distant aunt, unknown yet insistent, speaking of a family legacy that threatened to redefine everything Jake believed about himself. He listened intently, drawn into a narrative that was not his own, but felt eerily familiar. "Your grandmother left something for you," the voice continued, slicing through the fog of his daily life. "A trust, a chance to break free from the cycle that has bound our family for generations." The words resonated within him, tugging at the dormant ambition he had fought so hard to repress. Could this be the key to unlocking the aspirations he once buried deep beneath layers of obligation and despair? But beneath the surface of this revelation, a maelstrom of apprehension brewed. Financial stability hitched to his father's failing health created a bedrock of uncertainty. The cost of pursuing his lineage might include the emotional security that holding on to his father represented. Jake wrestled with the implications of the news. Would he be seen as a traitor abandoning his roots? Or could embracing this newfound family history pave a path to mutual understanding and empowerment? He ended the call with a mix of excitement and dread and turned to the kitchen window. As the last drops of rain slid down the glass, he let the weight of his choices settle. Questions crowded his mind. Was he prepared to face the uncomfortable realities of his lineage? The thought of being trapped in a privileged world surrounded by elements he had long resented filled him with unease. The professor's words rang true. Something had awakened within him, but the journey ahead was uncertain and fraught with peril. Days turned into weeks as Jake sought answers. He began researching the family name, navigating through old letters and documents, each page unveiling new facets of his family's history. Yet, the more he uncovered, the more conflicted he felt. It was a history laden with both opulence and loss. There was wealth and education, but there was also estrangement and the bitter truths that came with power. A panorama that revealed his family had been more than just the unapproachable elite he envisioned. They were also burdened by expectation and the relentless pursuit of maintaining their status. In the depths of this personal exploration, Jake stumbled upon a legacy of silent achievements. Some of his relatives had fought tirelessly for education and equality, and in that effort they had left behind a framework for empowerment that contradicted Jake's preconceptions. Perhaps these visages had not merely inherited wealth, but rather used it as a vessel for change. Inspired, he wondered if his journey could mirror that of his ancestors. Could he mold this potential into something that served not only himself, but also honored the sacrifices of those who came before? That night, seated at the cluttered diner counter, a plan began to crystallize amidst the chaos of his thoughts. He would confront his fears, delve deeper into this legacy, and align it with the core values of compassion and service that grounded his current existence. He envisioned a way to intertwine both worlds, creating a bridge rather than a chasm between his past and future. Just as all seemed poised for transformation, the phone rang again, breaking the fragile silence. The voice was different this time, direct, firm, a reminder that the past does not easily let go. "We need to talk about what this means for your father," said a voice he immediately recognized. His father's tone had never wavered, always the anchor in the turbulent waters of life. Jake felt his stomach drop. Here lay the ultimate confrontation, the pivot point where his evolving ambitions and the reality of his familial bonds collided. The decision to reclaim his family's legacy was swelling under the weight of duty. Would it forge a new identity for him, or would it act as the final nail in an already fragile relationship? The gravity of his next steps pushed him closer to an inevitable truth. He would have to face conflicting loyalties head-on, uncovering not just the wealth of his lineage, but the wealth of understanding that would be necessary to navigate this transformation. As he placed the receiver down, the urgency of his journey loomed larger than ever. His path was laid before him, but clarity remained shrouded in uncertainty. Would he step into the unknown, or would he remain tethered to the fear of change? The moment of decision was at hand, and with it the promise of either liberation or heartache. Jake stared at the phone, its weight heavy in his hand. Ring, but this time felt different. His father's voice had stirred something deeper within him, a sobering reminder of the stakes at play. He breathed slowly, grappling with the clash of his aspirations and the responsibilities that had shadowed him for so long. As the initial shock wore off, he felt an urgent compulsion to prepare for the inevitable conversation that could shift the ground beneath his feet. The prospect of explaining his motivations to his father both thrilled and terrified him. What if his father saw this as a betrayal, a rejection of the life they'd built together? But what if it was an awakening, a chance for Jake to reclaim his identity and forge a new path? Determined to enter the conversation with an open mind and solid grounding, he decided to enumerate his reasons. Through the labyrinth of his family's history, he had uncovered not just wealth, but a legacy of change and impact. He could share the stories of family members who dared to use privilege as a platform for making a difference. Jake resolved to frame his journey not as an escape, but as an evolution, an opportunity to honor the past by reshaping the future. He spent the following days transforming his thoughts into a clear narrative. He visited the library to find more about his ancestors' contributions to education and social justice. With each detail, the vision of himself as a potential force for good solidified, spurring him to embrace the uncomfortable realities about his lineage. The shift felt almost euphoric. It was as if the very fragments of himself he had hesitated to acknowledge were rising to the surface, demanding recognition. When the day of reckoning came, Jake found himself in the living room, the familiar space now laden with significance. He had arranged the room, bookshelves lined with dusty tomes and a plush couch that had cradled the weight of their shared history, to mirror the preparation he had undertaken mentally. The moment his father stepped into the room, sadness pooled in Jake's chest at the sight of him. The slow gait, the graying hair, the flicker of disquiet in his eyes. This was not the powerful figure from his youth. This was a man burdened by fatigue and a deepening silence that filled the gaps in their dialogues. Jake swallowed hard, fighting to center his thoughts amid the tenderness that enveloped the air. "Dad," he began, allowing the weight of the words to settle between them, "I want to talk about what Aunt Margaret shared with me." He explained the inheritance and what it represented, carefully laying out his desire to explore this legacy while still honoring their bond. "I think there's a way to integrate our family's history with the values you taught me. It wouldn't take me away from you. It could allow me to give back in ways we haven't considered." His father's brow furrowed, and Jake noted the myriad of emotions flickering across his face: surprise, fear, an inkling of pride. "Jake," his father finally responded, his voice trembling slightly, "this isn't just about money. It's about what it means to our family. Your grandmother would have wanted nothing but to see us united, not torn apart." A knot formed in Jake's stomach, and he felt the fine line between ambition and duty tighten around his chest. "I understand, Dad, but I believe there's a legacy to uphold beyond just maintaining our family's image. There's potential for impact, for changing lives." The tension crackled in the air between them, each man's perspective distinctly at stake. "No one ever truly walks away," his father said quietly, "but stepping into an unfamiliar world can change everything." The weight in Jake's heart pressed harder. Would his father accept his burgeoning desire to explore a new identity, or would the call to family loyalty hold him back? As the conversation deepened into uncharted territory, Jake realized that this moment marked the edge of a precipice. His views interlinked with his father's, but what remained unresolved loomed larger. How would they navigate their differing understandings of family, identity, and ambition? With each passing second, the dynamic shifted. Room for reconciliation opened, but at a cost. Jake sensed that the answers he sought were now intertwined with his father's acceptance of change, the kind that shifted identities and held the possibility of both triumph and turmoil. He took a breath, readying himself for the next pivotal step, knowing that the resolution to their confrontation would reshape not only himself, but their entire relationship. Would they forge a new understanding together, or would the chasm of their ambitions widen? As he sat on that precipice, the burden of his next revelation weighed palpably in the air. This was no longer a solitary journey. Jake could feel his core beliefs expanding, twisting into new shapes, urging him toward the leap into the unknown. He was on the cusp of discovering his true self, but the possibility of turmoil loomed as the next hurdle awaited. Could they emerge unscathed on the other side of this conversation? Jake's heart raced as his father's silence hung heavily between them, each ticking second amplifying the uncertainty surrounding their discussion. The ripple of contemplation etched deeper lines across his face, pushing Jake further into a whirlwind of apprehension and resolve. He was aware that this was not merely about revealing his aspirations. It was about standing firm amidst the complex fabric of their relationship, a delicate tapestry woven through years of expectation and sacrifice. "Dad," he finally ventured, voice steadying, "I care deeply about what family means. I don't want you to think I'm turning my back on our values or everything you've taught me. This isn't just a financial opportunity. It's a chance for real impact." His father's cautionary gaze met his, revealing the battle within. "It's noble, Jake, but there are consequences to consider. You may find yourself lost amidst the very change you seek." Lost. The word lingered, clawing at Jake's confidence. He had spent so long shaping his identity. What would it mean to relinquish control of it? He reassured himself that navigating this path was not relinquishing his past, but expanding upon it, redefining what his inherited legacy could mean. "But it's also a chance for growth," Jake countered, searching for the right words. "I don't have to fit into the mold that's been set for me. What if I could redefine our family's legacy, merge our values with actions that resonate beyond these walls?" The room seemed to compress around him. Jake pressed on, words tumbling forth, a torrent of unrelenting truth. "We have the means to effect change, Dad. We can uplift communities, support education, reshape lives. This is our responsibility." His father shifted, the unease palpable, remnants of the man he remembered striving to emerge. Jake grasped at the glimmer of that man, hoping to connect, to bridge the chasm that had begun to feel insurmountable. But the truth was still forming, just beyond reach. "Jake," his father responded quietly, the tremor in his voice contrasting sharply with the firmness in Jake's intentions. "You're speaking about ideals, but idealism can lead to disillusionment. I've watched it consume people who thought they could change the world." Judgment hardened Jake's resolve. He swallowed down the flames of frustration rising in his throat as he clarified. "But isn't that what you always taught me? To challenge the status quo, to strive for something more." The previous day's exhilaration now felt tinged with bitterness. His father appeared momentarily at a loss, the weight of his position evident. "Ambition without grounding can lead to ruins," he said at last, softness threading through the terse fabric of their exchange. "I want you to be cautious, Jake. What you're considering will change everything." Jake sensed his father's deep concern, a drowning worry resonating in his voice. It suddenly dawned on him that this was not merely a discussion of his aspirations, but a sincere fear of letting go, a fear that perhaps Jake's transformation could circle back and unravel their family ties. "Dad," he implored, feeling the urgency swell within him, "it's about evolving, not abandoning. We can do better, and together we can become part of a solution that's bigger than ourselves." A tangible shift enveloped the space, the challenge and the potential all wrapped around them like an electric current. The walls of generational expectation trembled against the force of his words. And in that vulnerability, Jake realized he stood at a pivotal point, not just in the conversation, but in his own evolution. "I need you to see that my journey is one of integrity, not rebellion," he added, his voice a mere whisper against the storm building between them. As their eyes locked, Jake's heart thundered with the enormity of what lay ahead. The leap was not merely toward a new identity. It was one he hoped would be fully supported by the man who had shaped his very essence. Would his father accept this transformational quest as a part of their shared legacy, or would it fracture the foundation they had built together? Jake inhaled deeply, knowing that this dialogue was only the beginning. With every word, he felt himself stretching, reaching toward a new understanding, not just of his aspirations, but of the delicate balance that existed between courage and fear. Yet, as he awaited his father's response, the unease returned. How deep did the roots of fear run within their family dialogue? The moment of truth loomed closer, and Jake steeled himself for what was to come. What lay beyond would either forge an unbreakable bond or push him to make his declaration without familial endorsement. Was he ready for either outcome? As the weight of silence grew unbearable, Jake felt the clock on the wall ticking louder, each second inducing waves of uncertainty in his chest. What had begun as hope-filled excitement was quickly morphing into a battleground where dreams clashed with familial expectations. He needed to fortify his resolve. His father's watching eyes reminded him of everything he had come to respect: hard work, integrity, and commitment. But he also had to reclaim his voice amidst the noise. "Dad," he started again, the adrenaline coursing through him providing clarity. "I've thought a lot about everything you've taught me. Ambition isn't just about personal gain. It can be harnessed to uplift others. I want to create something meaningful, not just for me, but for our family legacy." The conviction coursing through his veins steadied his voice, even as doubt crept into the corners of his mind. His father exhaled slowly, as if resigning to the weight of Jake's determination. "Jake, I see your passion, but your vision seems too far removed from the reality we live in. Sometimes pursuing such lofty dreams can cloud your judgment." Frustration sharpened Jake's clarity. He opened his mouth but hesitated, considering his words with care. "I understand the risks," he acknowledged, "but the risks of not pursuing this, that's what scares me. Living a life where my decisions are shackled by fear of failure, where I fall into a pattern of complacency, I can't imagine a future like that." Challenging his father's skepticism became an act of self-assertion, driving him deeper into the folds of his transformation. He could feel the roots of his own potential entangling with his father's apprehensions. This moment, not just a confrontation but an opportunity for growth, was a collection of small victories within their dialogue that promised to redefine their relationship. Suddenly, the pressing silence felt less like a barrier and more like a stepping stone. Jake realized he needed to not only address his father's doubts, but also challenge his own fears head-on. He needed to understand the value of what was truly at stake for both of them. "What if," he posed suddenly, "we approach this together? Perhaps I can show you this vision doesn't have to threaten what you hold dear." His father's brow furrowed as he considered the proposal, a mixture of skepticism and curiosity flashing across his features. "You want to pull me into your endeavor?" he asked cautiously. "Yes," Jake breathed out, the idea gaining momentum. "Let me show you what I've envisioned, and perhaps you can be part of it. Together, we can forge something that resonates beyond just profit. I need more than a mere blessing. I need your guidance, your wisdom." Jake felt a flicker of something hopeful awaken within him. Perhaps this could lead to a synthesis of their expectations and ambitions. What had once felt like isolation transformed into a potential partnership. He could sense the slightest shift in his father's posture. The walls of resistance seemed to waver in the presence of an alliance. "Trust is essential, Jake," his father said, a hint of softness now edging his voice. "But how can I be sure this isn't merely youthful idealism?" Jake's heart raced again, sensing the opening. "Because I'm willing to put in the hard work, not just as your son, but as your equal. Let's evaluate the risks together. I want to evolve, unafraid to confront the unknown, but also deeply aware of where I come from." As his father absorbed his words, anticipation swirled in Jake's stomach. This wasn't just dialogue. It was the foundation for a possible collaboration that could redefine both their lives. The conversation held the promise of transformation, but over the horizon lay uncharted territory filled with potential pitfalls and revelations. Would this be the path that bound them closer, or would it splinter into a divergence neither could navigate together? Jake's thoughts swelled with endless possibilities. As he awaited a response, his mind raced, contemplating the immense challenge ahead. Could he truly intertwine his father's legacy with his vision? Or was this the beginning of a rift that he couldn't foresee? All he could do was hold his breath and step forward into the uncertain. The moment of truth was just ahead. The silence stretched on, heavy and thick, almost tangible in the air between them. Jake's father looked down momentarily, as if calculating the risks in his mind. Jake could feel the momentum of hope frail in his grasp. If this moment fell through, he would not just lose an opportunity. He would return to the familiar confines that his father had built, potentially forsaking the chance to carve out his own path. "Let's talk about your idea," his father finally broke the stillness, a cautious tone pulling through his words. "Tell me what you envision." Jake straightened with renewed vigor. This was his chance to articulate the visions that had kept him awake at night. "I want to develop a platform that connects local artisans directly with consumers," he began, each word a step forward into uncharted territory. "It's not just about selling products. It's about preserving crafts that might otherwise fade away. We can build a community around it, empowering people to benefit directly from their skills without the overhead burden of retailers." His father's brow remained furrowed, but Jake pushed ahead, fueled by the urgency in his core. This can not only uplift the artisans, but also create a narrative around the importance of supporting local economies. Think about it. This is about creating value, not just exchanging goods. As the ideas spilled from him, he could feel the fervor coating his tone like a protective barrier. He outlined plans, projected figures, and painted a vivid picture of impact. His father's expressions shifted from skepticism to cautious intrigue, and with each word, Jake began to see flickers of acceptance. "But how do you plan to execute this?" his father challenged, his voice carrying an undertone of concern rather than dismissal. Vision without solid groundwork could lead to disillusionment. Jake had anticipated this question. "I've outlined a comprehensive business model," he stated confidently, pulling out his notebook. "The financial investment is crucial, but I'm prepared to seek investors who believe in this mission, people who value social commerce as much as profitability. And for me, I'm ready to start small, even just in our local market, to test the waters." For the first time, his father leaned forward, studying Jake's fervor with keen interest. "You seem to have thought this through," he acknowledged. "But have you considered what happens if it doesn't work out? What if you lose everything?" Jake hesitated, a sliver of doubt slicing through the bravado he had cultivated. Fear of failure hung over him like a dark cloud. He took a deep breath, processing the authentic fear that his father was presenting. "I have considered that," he admitted slowly. "But the greater risk, to me, is the possibility of living a life filled with what-ifs. It's about creating a story that is worth telling, regardless of the outcome." The silence enveloped them again, but this time it felt different. Jake felt his father's walls softening as he glanced away, clearly reflecting on the weight of what had just been said. There was tension in the air, not just the tension of conflict, but of understanding, a collision of dreams and realities. "Your determination is admirable, Jake," his father finally said, a warmth beginning to seep into his voice. "You've always been resourceful. Let's think this through together." Jake's heart raced as hope bloomed anew. They were entering into a territory where personal ambitions could align with family legacy. However, Jake also knew that this newfound alliance could crack under pressure if they faced substantial hurdles. "Let's set up a timeline to evaluate progress and potential challenges," Jake suggested, wondering about the pitfalls that lurked unseen in the shadows of their ambitious plans. But just as his father began to speak, a sudden thought flashed through Jake's mind. What if their collaboration was just the beginning of a much bigger revelation? The time had come to face the reality of uncharted waters, and Jake now stood upon the cusp of transformation, ready to dive in. Little did he know, the challenges ahead would test not only his determination, but also his understanding of sacrifice and trust in ways he couldn't yet fathom. As he awaited his father's response, he couldn't shake the feeling that beneath the surface of their budding collaboration lurked complexities that both terrified and excited him. Would they find a path together? Or would the very act of combining their legacies bring forth an unexpected conflict that would redefine their relationship? Jake felt a shiver of anticipation. Change was imminent, but it came cloaked in uncertainty. Jake studied his father's face, searching for the slightest hint of what lay ahead. The tension pulsed like a live wire, crackling with potential. His father's eyes darted around the room, traversing the space between them as if weighing each corner against the gravity of their conversation. What would it mean for them to build something together? The query loomed larger than their tentative alliance. "All right then, let's get to work," his father finally replied, a spark of collaboration igniting within the previously cautious atmosphere. "We should draft a detailed timeline and break down actionable steps you envision. This is no minor undertaking. You realize that, don't you?" Jake nodded, feeling a mix of excitement and trepidation. They started mapping out objectives, potential investor outreach, developing a marketing strategy, and initial product sourcing. Each item felt both monumental and manageable, like climbing a steep hill. Every reachable milestone an anticlimactic dip before the next ascent. As they delved deeper, the office transformed. It was no longer the dusty space where Jake had once felt stifled by his father's expectations. Now it exuded a collaborative energy. He caught glimpses of pride in his father's eyes, and wonder resonated within him at the prospect of creating something genuine. But doubts bubbled beneath the surface. What if their paths diverged rather than converged? Jake wrestled with thoughts of failure, thinking about what it could mean if their partnership derived from familial duty rather than shared vision. His father was not just a mentor, he was a titan of his industry, woven into the fabric of success. Who would listen to Jake when his father's shadow loomed so large? With each passing day, Jake committed himself to personal growth. He sought out insights from industry leaders, attended workshops, and networked with local artisans. In these encounters, he recognized hidden talents within himself, a knack for negotiation, an appreciation for storytelling, and a fierce resilience, both frightening and exhilarating. During one meeting, a seasoned entrepreneur candidly warned him, "You might feel like you're building a bridge for others, but remember, if you don't take the time to examine what motivates you, that bridge might just crumble beneath you." Those words reverberated in Jake's mind as he met with his father again. Their discussions shifted from theoretical concepts to gritty realities, tackling practical challenges head-on. Yet every time they encountered friction, a sense of dread lingered. Jake was unearthing aspects of himself he had buried to fit his father's traditional mold. This journey wasn't merely about funding artisan crafts. It forced Jake to confront the weight of legacy, his father's expectations juxtaposed against his own fervor. "Do you think I'm enough for this?" Jake asked one evening, vulnerability creeping into his voice. His heart raced as he posed the question like a dare. His father paused, caught off guard by the raw intensity of the moment. "Enough? It's not just about being enough. It's about the journey, what you learn along the way. Embrace your doubts. They're your guiding lights. If you're not challenged, you're not growing, son." Jake felt stripped bare, his father's words igniting a fire within. But with growth came a realization. He needed to establish boundaries and communicate his aspirations without fear. Their fledgling partnership was both exhilarating and suffocating, a realm where nurturing talent could morph into stifling dominance if left unchecked. What if his father's intentions, however noble, turned into obstacles? Would Jake find the courage to assert himself and ensure his voice mattered? As he stood on the precipice of a shifting relationship, he wondered, what would be the cost of this journey, for him, for his father, and the legacy they shared? As these thoughts unfurled, clarity emerged amid the fog. They were heading into murky waters, yet something transformative awaited on the other side. The moment of truth loomed. Could Jake navigate this delicate balance between ambition and tradition without losing himself? The entrepreneurial path might just turn into a crucible where his true character was forged. Just then, his phone buzzed, a notification announcing an investment meeting with a potential backer. Jake felt a rush of anticipation collide with dread. Would this be their breakthrough or another hurdle, testing the very foundation of their partnership? The journey had only just begun, and uncertainty hung in the air like a storm waiting to unleash its fury. The days leading up to the investment meeting were a blur of feverish activity for Jake. Determination drove him as he refined the pitch, meticulously assembling every aspect of their proposal. Thankfulness mingled with anxiety. The gravity of the moment felt like an anchor weighing heavily on him. Would he be able to articulate not only the potential of their project, but also his vision and worth? Each practice session with his father brought both insight and exasperation. They clashed repeatedly over their presentation style, his father advocating for a polished, traditional approach, while Jake pushed for authenticity that reflected his true self. These arguments flickered like flames, bright but consuming. Jake struggled to understand the best way to honor his father's legacy while remaining faithful to his own narrative. "Trust the numbers, Jake. It's a business meeting," his father insisted one morning as they reviewed their slides. "Investors want to hear solid projections. They don't care about your stories." "But they might care about the people behind the numbers," Jake countered, his pulse quickening. "If we're just facts on a screen, how will they connect? This isn't just a business, it's a community." The tension crystallized into a form of motivation, propelling him to explore deeper facets of his identity. He needed to navigate these waters with skill and precision, realizing that this confrontation with his father was not just about business, but a pivotal moment of emotional growth. On the eve of the meeting, as Jake settled into his room surrounded by notes and sketches, an unsettling thought invaded his focus. Was he merely mimicking someone else's narrative? The very stories he sought to share, were they truly his, or simply echoes of his father's expectations? Sleep eluded him. Dawn broke with a wash of dim light spilling into his room, and Jake rose, unsettled yet ready. He needed to unveil his voice, yet a fog of doubt swirled in his mind. The strategy they had crafted echoed burdeningly. Would it blend their visions, or merely reinforce his father's blueprint? Arriving at the venue, Jake's heart raced. Nervous energy buzzed through the air. The room was filled with sharp suits and eager investors, faces unreadable. Yet, as he scanned the crowd, a sense of battle readiness stirred within him. In the thrumming silence, he caught his father's gaze, returning a nod loaded with unspoken encouragement. "Remember, this is about passion," he whispered, just before stepping up to present. The presentation unfolded, and Jake felt an unusual warmth pulse through him as he took center stage. He spoke about the handcrafted products, the artisan stories, and the impact on the community. As his rhythm intensified, each word solidified into an anchor, and Jake noticed a flicker of interest from the investors. The spark ignited something special, morphing his nerves into a palpable strength. Midway through, he shared a personal anecdote about the first time he had witnessed the joy of creation among artisans struggling on the fringes, and how it had galvanized his purpose. The room, devoid of breaths just moments before, now hung on his words. But then he spotted a familiar face among the audience, a previous business associate of his father's, someone who had once dismissed Jake's ideas outright. The man's expression was skeptical, even dismissive. Jake's confidence wavered, his words threatening to retreat. Was this meeting just a rehash of the past? Could he transcend those long-held doubts and reclaim his right to speak? He blinked through uncertainty, focusing on the faces that leaned in, intrigued rather than skeptical. Did he believe in the vision he was sharing?
As he concluded the pitch, applause erupted around him. Jake felt a rush mingled with disbelief. Had he managed to connect, or was it nothing more than a fleeting moment before inevitable rejection? As questions and feedback flowed, he stood at the tightrope between hope and despair. And in that tightrope walk, Jake finally confronted a significant truth. The journey towards self-discovery was not linear or easy. Ultimately, clarity would come from confronting not just the outside challenges, but the haunting specters of doubt within. Could this meeting mark a turning point in his relationship with his father, or would unresolved tensions resurface as they navigated this new territory together? As he stepped away from the stage, feeling both exhilarated and drained, Jake's heart thudded with anticipation. Would the investors embrace his vision? And more critically, would it redefine how he viewed himself amid his father's towering legacy? The answer waited somewhere in the echoes of their collaboration, just out of reach, shimmering tantalizingly in the air. Jake stepped off the stage, a whirlwind of emotions roiling inside him. The applause had felt real, yet the warmth began to fade, replaced by the chill of uncertainty. He scanned the audience for signs, nods of approval, frowns of skepticism. So much hinged on this moment, and he grappled to maintain the revelation he had experienced during the presentation. Yet, beneath the surface excitement, fears swelled anew. The panel of investors began their questioning, their faces shifting from thoughtful to intrigued, then back again. Each inquiry felt like dissecting an open wound. Jake realized he needed to defend not just the project, but his very identity. He wondered if they saw him as more than a mere extension of his father's ambitions. One investor posed a question that sliced through his bravado. Why should we invest in you when you have always stood in the shadow of your father? The room fell silent, eyes flickering to Jake, their collective anticipation hanging heavily in the air. In that moment, fear threatened to rear its head, whispering that perhaps they were right. Perhaps he was merely his father's son, playing a role scripted long ago. But deep inside, something different began to brew, a fierce pulse of defiance against that notion. "Because I'm ready to step out of that shadow," Jake replied, voice unwavering. "I've learned to turn this legacy into something uniquely mine." The room buzzed with murmurs of interest, but doubt clung to him like a second skin. As the questioning continued, Jake focused on his beliefs in craftsmanship and community, translating them into a language the investors could understand. Yet, even as he spoke, a voice in his mind echoed. Did he truly believe in what he was saying? The remaining fragments of self-doubt stirred just beneath the surface. Following the meeting, Jake and his father retreated to a quiet corridor, the din of applause and voices fading into background noise. His father's expression was mixed, a tight smile reflecting pride, but a flicker of concern hung in his eyes. "You did well out there," he admitted begrudgingly. Yet the judgment that lingered beneath felt sharper than any praise. "I want to talk about how we can continue this path," Jake said, feeling bold. He had battled not just for the project, but for his autonomy, for recognition. It was time for a new dialogue. "But I need it to be my path, Dad, not just a continuation of yours." His father's gaze flickered with disbelief, the tension palpable. "You're young, Jake. Experience will guide you. Focus on what we've built together." "Then, if we're building together, we need to redefine together," Jake asserted, leaning in. He could feel the adrenaline coursing through his veins. "What if this is about more than just profit? What if it's about authentic connection?" His father crossed his arms, his expression a barricade raising doubts. Jake's heart raced. Did this conversation hold the potential for something fundamental to shift between them? The thought propelled him forward against the heavy weight of tradition, ready to redefine their partnership as he had done with the investors. "Can you look at me, at us, as a team, not just a mentor and a mentee? I need you to trust my instincts," Jake pleaded. A silence loomed, stretching time.
Jake's breath caught as he anticipated either breakthrough or breakdown. His father's brow furrowed, gears visibly turning in his mind, the weight of familial expectations wrestling with the nascent recognition of Jake's ambitions. "I've always trusted you," his father finally replied, albeit hesitantly. "But balance is key." "Then let's find balance together," Jake proposed, enthusiasm igniting in him once more. "Let's craft something that honors the past but also embraces the future." Just when Jake started to feel a flicker of hope, a sudden message pinged on his phone. A reflection of his validation or a looming threat? He opened it to find a notification from one of the investors, an invitation to meet again. But the meeting was with a solo investor, the very man whose dismissive face had challenged his confidence. It struck like a bolt, sending ripples of anxiety through him. What did this new invitation mean? Acceptance or another round of scrutiny? Jake's heart raced again with a blend of hope and dread. Could this opportunity shift everything? His father's gaze rested on him, both skeptical and hopeful, as realization set in. This engagement had the potential to redefine everything. The future stirred ominously, just out of reach. What awaited him in that meeting? Was this the promise of transformation, or was it merely another stage to battle his fear? He couldn't yet tell, but he felt ready to confront whatever awaited him beyond the door. As Jake stood at the entrance of the conference room, his heart pulsing in sync with the rhythm of his aspirations, he took a moment to breathe. This meeting was unlike any he had attended before. It was not merely a presentation, but a critical juncture in his journey toward solidifying his identity and ambition. The lessons learned alongside his father resonated in him, carving pathways of strength and conviction as he prepared to step forward. The investor's office emerged from elegance and commitment. Art Deco adorned the walls, a reflection of rich histories merging with progressive ideas. Jake felt a balance of vulnerability and resilience welling within. He was not just there to seek funding, but to validate the vision rooted in community and craftsmanship. As he introduced himself, the man's expression shifted subtly from formality to intrigue. Jake's carefully crafted pitch unfolded, alive with the authenticity he had fought to embrace. His words carried the weight of purpose as he spoke passionately about empowering artisans and bolstering local economies. Transparency breathed life into his numbers, establishing a solid connection beyond mere projections. When the investor asked why he believed he could succeed where others had failed, Jake leaned into his truth. "Because I am not just here to build a business, I am here to build a legacy that honors my past while cultivating impact. I know the value of community because I have witnessed it firsthand." The energy in the room shifted as he navigated through his presentation with conviction. His vision was not just a financial venture, but a deeply rooted commitment to service and authenticity. After an extensive discussion, he received the twinkling acknowledgement he had longed for. "You have a unique perspective, Jake, and that passion can fuel not just success, but transformation for many." It felt like a weight lifted. It was not just about finances, it was an acknowledgement that he was stepping beyond the bounds of his upbringing and aspirations. As he exited the meeting, the flush of triumph surged through him. But the real victory was not just winning over the investor. Rather, it was the undeniable understanding that he had stepped into his own, finding a voice within a legacy that had once felt constrictive. In the following weeks, the partnership took roots and flourished. Dialogue with his father shifted into collaborative brainstorming sessions. They melded financial strategies with purpose, outlining the framework that highlighted the balance they had both sought. The blend of tradition with innovation created space for equal footing, ensuring Jake's voice was heard and valued. One evening, as they reviewed progress over dinner, Jake caught a glimmer in his father's eyes. The pride had turned into unwavering respect. "You have accomplished something remarkable, Jake, not just for the business, but for the sense of identity we have forged together," his father remarked.
There was a richness in the tone that felt different, more supportive. "What matters is that we can still be family, even as we shape this future," Jake replied, the urgency to uphold this delicate balance resonating deeply within him. The partnership was no longer defined by power, hierarchy, or legacy. It had transformed into co-creation, nurtured by trust. Through this journey, Jake had confronted fears head-on, not only rediscovering himself, but redefining what it meant to forge a new path while honoring familial bonds. He was no longer confined by perceived limitations. Ambition intertwined with compassion became his guiding light, producing unwavering confidence and competence. As the launch approached, excitement bubbled within him. He reflected upon the strength of principles anchored through his lineage, realizing now that he had woven his own story, a narrative of empowerment, equality, and shared vision. When the day arrived, Jake bustled with anticipation. The launch epitomized not just a business venture, but represented the culmination of risk, growth, and transformation that he had embraced. The community he envisioned and built together began to vibrate with energy, creativity, and purpose. Jake smiled, feeling a sense of parallel between the man who had once spent hours pouring coffee and the innovator standing before his own crafted narrative. He had achieved the impossible. He had conquering not just the doubts of others, but the echoes of expectation within himself, emerging proud, fulfilled, and capable. His journey was indeed just beginning. Now, this story needs your voice. Subscribe immediately to the channel to not miss the next exclusive emotional stories. Leave a like now to feed the algorithm. Comment your reactions and theories about the ending. You're part of this journey. Share instantly this video with at least 5 friends who need to see this conclusion. Don't wait even one more second to share. Only true fans of personal overcoming stories understand the importance of supporting the channel through these actions.